didn't work.
It happened high enough to know.
So you just
Really?
abort.
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 I knocked him out.
You'd have to do a lot of editing on that.
Just talking about thrust and lube. Welcome back. So here we are. We kind of made a mess before we turned the camera on, but there is a box that came with the rebuild kit, and this box has all of the main bearings for the block, and the main bearings are the ones that the crank is actually spinning in. So we have
Main journals of the crankshaft.
main journals of the crankshaft. So in this box, you will find two types of bearings, one that has a groove and one that does not have a groove. And the grooved guy goes down in the block side, and you're going to notice that there's a little groove on these guys, so you really can't screw this up. And the groove goes into the male side goes into the groove side of the motor, and this will allow the oil to pass on the bottom side. And the top side's going to go on the top part here like so. So we are actually going to get everything lubed up with some assembly lube.
So just a bit in the block side, and then you're going to want to do a bit on your cap side as well. Again, as mentioned, we have the area on our bearing that will allow the oil to flow through. There is actually an oil journal on the block side. You have two holes. The oil will flow here, and then it will actually sit in this recess and lubricate the crankshaft.
See the arrow here, so the arrow always means you're pointing towards the front side of the motor. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this guy, as you can see, is a completely different unit because he's at the back where your rear main seal and everything else will go. So again, it's pretty straightforward, guys. Take your time, lube everything up. You'll be good to go.
We're going to install these, torque them to spec, and then actually do measurements on all of our bearing clearances and make sure that our crankshaft outside diameter of the journals and the inside diameter of these allow us to have the proper clearance.
So why is the center one fatter?
So that is what's actually called your thrust bearing. As you notice, it has sides on it. And when the crankshaft is installed, this actually keeps the crankshaft from walking back and forth in the block. When you install these as well, you will have to do a thrust measurement. So with a dial indicator, you're actually going to want to pry on the crankshaft. You can usually use one of the throws or one of the weights, offset weights I should say. Pry on that all the way forward, zero your dial indicator, and then pry it all the way back and measure what your total travel is there. There is a spec for that as well, so you're going to want to follow that closely. If it's too far out, if you have too much thrust, you can actually push a rear main seal back and cause it to start pouring oil out of the back of the block.
Do you hear that, guys? You can have too much thrust.
You would.
Dos.
Always make sure you have a bit of thread again, or sorry, a bit of oil on the threads of the bolts. Keeps them smooth going down as you're tightening. Make sure that you get a proper torque spec.
You will notice this bolt is a bolt stud. Dual function because the oil pump actually has a bracket that will bolt to this, so the oil pump will bolt that on shortly once the crank and everything else is back in place. And you'll see how that oil pump bolts up.
Bore gauge.
So in my hand I have a inside bore gauge, and I just asked Jordan what the technical name was because I'm very bad with technical names. This came in a kit off Amazon, 32.
For about $30.
30 bucks. That was Canadian dollars too, so it's only like $20 American right now. So what we want to do is we want to use this tool within our main caps here. Jordan has just torqued all these guys down so we can get an accurate reading, and then I will do that. And he has this fancy micrometer, which is super spec. You want to teach them how to read that? Might need a whole episode for that.
Well, we have imperial and also metric micrometers. Typically with engine building, you're going to see imperial. This one goes to 4 decimal places. So right now, this is a 2-inch to 3-inch micrometer. If you zero it, it's going to only go down to 2 inches. I have 4 different sizes depending on the diameter of the item you are actually measuring. Our measurement here, if we roll down, we are going to be 2.2. Because we have not come all the way over to the 0 yet, we're going to be 4. So 2.24, and then add your 23. So we're at 2.248.
2.248. So we did a little bit of research beforehand, so we wanted to be prepared, and the specifications that were given allows for a range, and the range that we're allowed is 0.0004 of an inch all the way up to 0.0019. 26, sorry.
Yeah.
So that is quite a bit. It sounds like a bit when it's really, we're talking almost nothing, but that's how accurate things need to be. So when we do some math, we need to do some subtraction so that we can get our final number and see if it's within that range.
And what we did earlier is we actually measured the main journals on the crankshaft, have them all written down. It's easiest if you guys just write it all down, keep track of it. So we measured all that. Then we have our actual main bearing measurement. You're going to take this number, subtract this number. That's going to give you your actual bearing clearance, which is going to range between this 0.004 and 0.0004 and 0.0026. So as long as you are in between those specs, everything is still in tolerance and you're good to go. You will get a small variation if you don't actually torque these down to spec, because it's going to actually give you what's called bearing crush when you torque the caps down. So that is one extra important step.
Very good. So we'll just go ahead here. So we've already done the first 3. They're all well within spec. So this tool just has a little spinny at the bottom. When you undo the spinny, it allows the little arms, I guess, to stretch out. Then as soon as you have your measurement, you tighten your spinny up. And we see what the micrometer says.
2.250.
Which was the same as the first guy, I believe.
Yes.
Second guy. We're good. All in the clear.
All of our clearances are in spec. We can now disassemble, take the caps back off. We're going to install more assembly lube on the bearings, and then set our crankshaft in and actually torque it down to spec.
All right, so Jordan has our beautiful polished crankshaft that we did with.
Came out real nice.
I swapped my shoes because my shoelaces were destroyed after. So we're going to go ahead and now set this down inside. We did use more lube on everything. You can see the lovely red color. So we'll go ahead and get this set down into place, and then we're going to put the main caps back on and torque them 60, 70 foot-pounds each as per the torque specifications.
All right. Just want to make sure you place it in there gently. No back and forth movements. Don't want to score anything. And then the first one that will kind of set us up here will be our thrust bearing. I also have assembly lube on the sides. All right, so we're just gonna bring these down. Just until they're snug. Crisscross pattern, make sure everything lines up easy and you're pulling it down evenly. And then you're going to start in the middle. Just bring them up tight.
So now it's piston time. Pistons again, they are marked in two places on the caps, just like these guys were. And there's also a marking in the top of the piston here, which means this should face the front of the motor. We have our piston compressor, or ring compressor tool here. So this is going to allow us to get the rings compressed so that we can get these knocked into the motor. And one last thing that we need to do is make sure that these rings are actually positioned the way that they need to be in order to ensure that they seat and do their job, so that we don't make all of this hard work go to waste.
So what we're doing here is we're just lining up our piston rings. If you notice, we have, as previously explained, the dot on the top of the piston that points towards the crankshaft balancer or front of the engine. So our orientation is going to be based off of this. For our oil rings on the bottom, we're actually going to have 10 and 2 for the openings on them. For the wafer spring in the center, it's actually going to be located down at 6. And for our compression rings, the upper 2 rings, we're actually going to have them at 4 and 8 o'clock. So everything is going to be at an orientation. As these pistons go up and down, the piston rings are going to rotate. And those gaps are not going to line up at any point, and then we're not going to have blow-by or compression leaking out of the cylinder and down into the oil pan. All right, so we have our nifty piston ring compressor. Install down, so you're sure that you're covering all your rings. Leave a bit of the skirt exposed and try and make sure that it is squared up. Snug it right down. We have already put oil in the cylinders here, and big thing, when you are installing the piston, you don't want the rod to just be hanging. You can score the cylinders and also the crankshaft. So when you install it, if you can support it from the bottom side and then gently drop the piston in, then you're going to just give it some soft taps with a handle.
There you go. Beautiful. If you're wondering why we waited to the last cylinder, it's because we've perfected our technique. Oh, snap. That 4 hands are better than 2. Did that break?
The tool is still together. It's just a little
I thought
finicky.
this was perfect.
I know.
What kind of operation is running here?
Our technique is perfected. The tool could be faulty.
Please rotate the crankshaft. Keep going. All right. Good.
Want to try that with my crankshaft?
Demontage.
No? We're gonna need more lube. Why?
More thrust.
I thought you said to be careful with how much thrust there was.
Yeah, there could be too much thrust.
Okay, this one's not
I
going
get a
in
hold
the
of you.
film
You're
now
gonna fucking hurt.
because it didn't work.
What happened? Oh, I knocked another.
So you just
Really?
abort.
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 I knocked another.
You'd have to do a lot of editing on that. Just talking about thrust and lube.
I'm a little upset by the way. But why the you got a t-shirt, not me? I'm sponsored by Bud Light now. You missed out. See you, baby.
All right, so we're going to install our timing chain here. First, we have our lower sprocket. It does go onto a keyway. Make sure your timing dot is out. Then what we're going to do is actually install the crankshaft bolt so that we can rotate the engine to top dead center on number 1. All right.
There.
We have our timing mark here, and then we actually have a corresponding timing mark on the camshaft sprocket. And then rotate around, line your 2 marks up, remove the sprocket. We are going to install the timing chain. And it slides on just like that. We have our retaining washer and plate, and then the bolt. So there's a tab on the back side of that. It's actually going to line up in that dowel pin hole. We have our bolt and washer. Install. Snug it up. And then torque to spec. And we're installed.